Parking, located in the heart of East Memphis. Let us host your next intimate birthday gathering, family repast, bachelorette party, wedding and reception, baby shower, corporate meeting, social club event. Call us today. Don't wait. 901-244-6874. The all-new SVP Banquet and Event Center. Tune in to Talking Law with attorney Daryl O'Neill and a special guest host, attorney Jerome Payne. Live TV talk on your digital device, on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Download the SVP TV app right now. Check us out every Tuesday on Comcast Cable, Channel 17, 8:30 p.m. And we are live every Friday on Facebook Live, 6 o'clock in the evening. You've got a question, our attorneys have the answer. So let's talk law with attorney Daryl O'Neill on the SVP TV network.
Welcome to Talking Law with Daryl O'Neill. I'm your host. I got my main man, Jerome, with
What's
me.
up, Daryl?
Man, long time in the neighborhood.
Man, it sure has.
We've been on vacation, man. We've been handling a little bit of things, holidays and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Look, we got a good show for you today. We really want to talk about some landlord-tenant stuff.
Yeah.
And really want to hone in. A real tragic event happened a couple of days ago.
Yes.
And I really want to talk about that
Yes.
because that's the kind of thing. Homeowner had 4 children die in a fire in a place that they were renting.
Right.
So who's responsible?
Right.
So
Is there any blame?
Is there any blame?
Anywhere?
Who has the liability?
Yeah, right.
So on and so forth.
Or is it just what we're calling out just a tragic event?
Regardless of whatever it is,
Right.
regardless of who's to blame, it's
Right.
definitely tragic.
Right.
Regardless.
No question about that.
So let's give some shout outs, Jerome.
Okay,
Man, my son is still doing all right in California, so I give shout outs to my son in California. Let's move on down here to the little more east here. Let's talk to, give our shout outs to Little Rock, Arkansas.
The Arkansans.
Give our shout outs to West Memphis, Arkansas. Give our shout outs to Shelby County, Memphis. Shout outs to Mississippi. And shout outs to Mom, the great state of Missouri.
All right, Daryl.
Look, if you're watching Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Roku TV, Fire Stick, Apple TV, you can call in and we'll answer whatever questions you have. Thank you. Even if the questions that you have are not on the subject that we're talking about. So
Absolutely.
We gladly will divert.
Absolutely.
And Jerome, before we get in it, you had a question. So let's answer your question before we get into our topic.
Thank you, Daryl. I got a question that my church is planning a trip for the church members.
Okay.
The question is, should something occur, who is liable for some type of mishap during the trip? So remember, we got to have enough facts.
Right.
First of all, the bus is going to be chartered by a legitimate chartering company.
Right.
The church is simply chartering a bus to go to a destination. So the church, that's all the church is doing. The church is kind of like the middleman and moving these different things around. So should some calamity occur, where is liability lying?
Yeah, Jerome, that's a really tough question in my mind, because the first part of it is, so if I had to give a short answer to the church, I would tell the church I don't think they would have any liability.
Okay.
If I had to give a short answer.
All right.
And here's the reason why I'm saying that. The question is whether or not they're assuming the risk of everything that's happened. So for instance, if they're chartering a bus from a third party, then I think that the bus would be responsible for anything that happened on the bus. Okay. If they're having events or they're paying for the rooms or whatever, I think even if they're paying for the rooms, the person that they're paying for the rooms will have a responsibility if anything happens with the rooms. If they're on an event where they're traveling or they're doing activities or something like that, I think wherever they're doing those activities, if something happens, then those people that are overseeing those activities, the organization, will be responsible. For instance, if they went to the World Fair and one of the rides broke, but there's a church scheduled trip, one of the rides broke, then I think that the World Fair would be responsible, not the church. So I think that, obviously there are some different scenarios where you can lock them in and bring them in. And we say this all the time. Just because you may not have any liability doesn't mean you're not going to get sued. Because everybody, what lawyers do, and I do this also, is I sue everybody and I make you find out how to get yourself out of it. Because I'm normally going to have enough facts to keep you in. You got to give me something to let you out. Because all you got to do is allege one fact to keep somebody in, and whether or not they're responsible is a factual determination, and that's going to be made either as summary judgment motion or it's going to be made by the jury.
Darryl, for the first time, I absolutely agree with every single thing you just said.
What the world coming to?
Every single thing that you just said is what my mind immediately said too. I believe that also one thing may be missing is that there should be some type of permission slip in my mind, sort of like what we do when our kids go on field trips. I don't know what it would contain, but certainly to let them know that they are not necessarily you're assuming the risk. You're assuming the risk that this trip is going to be free from any negligence on the church's part, because you really can't you can't waiver acts of negligence. So
you can, but there's
you can waive negligence.
Yeah. I mean, you see that happens all the time.
Okay.
When you get on a ride, right? Then what they do is they make you sign a waiver.
Right.
And a waiver will protect the amusement park or whomever from negligence. It won't protect them from gross negligence. So you can protect yourself from negligence. You just can't protect yourself from gross negligence.
That's very good, Darryl, because most people don't know that there are several different stages of negligence. There's per se negligence.
Yeah. Which if you got a waiver, they're going to be immune.
Right, and then there's gross negligence, and then there's just what? Well, should have maybe. What's the third one? There's a third one too.
This is just regular negligence.
Yeah.
So there's negligence per se, negligence, and then there is gross negligence.
Right.
Now, obviously, negligence and negligence per se, and even gross negligence have different categories under them. But the point of the matter is that if it's negligence, basic negligence, duty, breach, causation, and you got harm, then normally if you have a waiver, they're not going to be responsible.
Okay, I got you.
But if it's gross negligence, for instance, you've renting a dunk tank.
Okay.
Where people dunking in the water, right? Well, what would be gross negligence is you don't put any water in the tank. Somebody throws the ball, somebody falls down and breaks their leg. That's gross negligence.
Good.
Because you are supposed to. Negligence would be, you got water in there, everything is supposed to be going the way it's supposed to. You throw the ball, hits the thing, it falls, they hit the water, break their leg. That's negligence. It could be negligence, or that could just be an accident.
Well, very good too, because or there is an organized tour to a pool, to a swimming pool, where it clearly says no lifeguard is on duty, and you have kids or something in the deep part of the pool. That's gross negligence on the leader of maybe that group who has the organized trip going to the pool.
I don't.
You wouldn't think so?
That's a little tougher. Because now you got to also start looking at what they call assumption of risk.
I thought we got rid of assumption of risk.
Well, it's not something that's, because again, remember, we're not in Tennessee.
Oh.
You going on a trip, you may be going on a trip outside of the state of Tennessee.
That's true.
In Tennessee, and I still think you still have some levels of assumption of risk here too.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not forced per se done away with.
Well, remember too, the young man, I think they're just now settling that lawsuit. I think the young man who was really too large to be in that ride, and they couldn't really pull down the safety. You remember that? And he fell off the ride.
Well, and then they let him get on it anyway?
They let him
Oh,
get
that's
on.
stupid.
No, but I think he insisted or something.
That's stupid.
So is that gross negligence?
No,
or
that's
is
stupid. That's
there,
not.
there is no term in the law
Oh,
for
stupid.
stupid. What's the statute for stupid?
Well, okay, I can't be gross negligent, right?
Right.
Okay, because one, I guess my problem is I should have put you off the ride because
Right.
I have rules that say you have to be a certain height, a certain weight, a
That's
certain
right.
whatever, and then the safety bar has to work.
That's right.
If the safety bar is not going to work, why would I let you stay on the ride? He can't assist. Dude, you too fat. Get off.
Right.
There's no assisting at that time
Right.
because you don't make the. It says you got to be at least 5 foot tall.
That's right.
And you got to be.
So many pounds. You got to weigh so many
under
pounds.
200 pounds.
Right.
Well, you weigh 215.
Right.
You 4'11".
Right.
Or 4'9".
Right.
I said, oh man, you know.
But they still allowed him on
That's the stupid
ride.
part. That's what I mean when I say stupid. You said it ain't no law. Yeah, it is. That's it. The law says I have rules and regulations. And I don't know if that's gross negligence.
Right.
I guess it could be considered gross.
Well, I mean,
I think that is gross negligence.
Yeah.
You have a set of rules
Right.
that say you are not
Clearly
gonna-
violating them.
your own rules.
Clearly know that he's not locked in safely. So the liability against the, well, this is the new employee to the employee.
Yeah,
The
see-
employee was a renter employee too.
So that's where it becomes different.
Right.
Whether or not the company will be liable or whether or not the individual will be liable.
Okay.
So that's where you start getting into some nuances. Hey, Angel, put the number up there. You know, that's where it gets into,
Right.
because, yeah, the new person may be responsible, but the question is whether or not the company itself is liable.
That's a field day for lawyers like us.
It is. Again, and then you get cases like that, and they do resolve sometimes.
Right. Sometimes they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jerome, a tragic incident happened not too long ago, 3, 4, 5 days ago.
Yeah. No question.
So let me give you the facts, Jerome,
Okay.
as I understand it.
Okay.
There was an apartment fire that happened, and in this apartment fire, there were 4 children that died.
Right.
That's the basic of it. My understanding is that the landlord had started the eviction process of the family, and it's my understanding that somebody, and I don't want to get into who it was.
That's right.
But somebody potentially wired or rigged up the wiring, and it was the rigged wiring that led to the fire.
Because the utilities had been shut off
Well,
by
potentially.
MLG&W.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. So the question becomes, is the apartment complex, in my mind, is the apartment complex responsible for the acts of the death of those children?
And also, I don't believe that there was a working smoke detector, because that issue has popped up a couple of times too
Yeah.
around it. So, because I saw something too where the fire department is talking about maybe doing safety checks every month in particular areas to make sure that there is a working fire smoke detector somewhere.
Yeah.
So that may be an issue. That just may be an issue. It just may be an issue there.
It's something to look at.
Okay. So
And again,
so the question is what?
so the question is, who's responsible? I mean, that's how simple I want to say.
Oh yeah.
Who's responsible?
But I don't like that.
Well, no.
I don't like
Because
that. Who's
that's a hard
responsible?
question.
Because responsible.
Who's negligent?
Yeah. Who has exposure?
Yeah.
How you like that?
Okay. Okay. And let me show you how you mess with the landlord.
Okay.
Even though I think the landlord has an out.
Okay.
But here's how you mess with the landlord. If you're in the process of evicting somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
You knew they didn't have utilities, right? You knew it was hot. You knew that they didn't have any air without the utilities. You knew that they would have had to do something to get air, get heat, get something. You knew they would have to do something to start up, to protect themselves from the elements. So is it foreseeable that a landlord that's evicting someone, is it foreseeable that that person would do something stupid to cause some kind of damage?
I like the way that you did that because you weaved enough facts in there to put some shade on the landlord. Because the way you laid that out, that may put some shade on the landlord. But the landlord has absolutely nothing to do with you not paying your utility bill.
No.
And with you being evicted. I'm already hurting now because you probably haven't paid rent in some time. So why should it be my concern about whether you have air, heat, utilities, or anything? Why is that my concern?
Because ERLTA says it's your concern. The Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act says, and it doesn't caveat when you get ready to evict somebody or not. What it says is you have to provide essential services.
Not if that lease has been terminated.
Now, lease has not been terminated.
It was terminated because they're being evicted. So
but it's not terminated until you have been evicted. So
interesting.
Here's what the law will do. Here's what the law will do to you. Now, again, I'm just being a lawyer.
No, that's interesting.
I'm just being
that.
a lawyer here,
I like
okay?
that.
Because I don't like the viability of this. Okay, so I'm throwing my stuff out there.
I like it because you're building a good case, in my opinion.
So
you're gonna lose, but
my chances of losing are pretty high.
Yeah, go ahead.
But here's how it works. Jerome.
Okay.
It says that the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act says that you must provide essential services. Okay. Now the question is, obviously, I don't provide utilities, right? Because you got to pay for that from somebody else.
But you know what? There are some leases that the utilities are a part of the lease.
They are.
And so that may be a whole different category. Then you might be absolutely right.
Yeah.
If I'm responsible for paying the utilities, and then I let them get cut off, that's a good point.
And the other part of that is, and this is what most people don't know, what the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act says, just because somebody's not paying, you can't put their stuff on the street.
No, for sure.
Just because somebody is not paying or they haven't paid, you can't change the locks.
For sure.
Just because somebody's not paying, you can't cut the system where the air won't work or where the water won't work. So you can't do something
That's for
to
sure.
the essential services to force this person to move faster.
And you cannot keep them from getting their things out of the property.
Correct.
But there you may have an issue with AC. There is no responsibility to provide air conditioning.
No, it's not that it's depending on what judge you get, it is, because what they'll say is that's in Memphis in the summertime, that's an essential element.
It's specifically excluded.
In ERLTA?
Yes.
See, I don't remember seeing it.
And the reason why is I talked to do you know Rex Pepper? Don't you know Howard Pepper?
Yeah.
Howard Pepper's the landlord. I think he wrote the book on Alta.
Yeah.
And I talked to Pepper, and Pepper said the reason why it was not a part of Alta was because so many schools did not have air conditioning at the time when they passed that legislation. If it had said that air conditioning was an essential service, it would have required them to immediately air condition all of the schools. That's why it was specifically excluded. So there is no responsibility to provide air conditioning. In fact, there was a lady just recently who was hospitalized because she was living in a place with no air conditioning.
Yeah, people die with all the time over that.
But it's specifically excluded.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've actually argued the other way. And
was successful?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, she shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have been because it's not required.
Well, it wasn't that it was, what they did is they cut the units.
Oh, they can't do that.
Yeah, they cut the units.
I mean, you can't. I mean, if it's already existing.
Yeah, they cut the units.
And the reason why, the reason why you were successful then was because the motivation was to try and force them to pay rent.
Right.
That can't be a part of it. Period.
cut the air conditioner off. They towed the vehicle. Most person had a vehicle in the yard. They towed that vehicle. So yeah, I mean.
Now, Dale, I'm gonna use your word now. Stupid.
Yeah. And Earlton says all. It tells you. I mean, look, if I'm a landlord, even if I'm a tenant,
Yeah.
Earlton is the best thing on this
No
world because
question.
it tells you step by step what is expected of the landlord.
No question.
And it tells you step by step what is expected from the tenant. So you got a question. So if a disabled person cannot find a new housing within agreed 60 days, can the landlord immediately evict them? And I think the answer to that question, the first part of this question, the answer to that question is no.
Well, so, wait a minute. So what now?
So
Not immediately.
exactly.
Take that immediately out of there.
Right.
Yeah, immediately.
Well, yeah, exactly. What ends up happening is, if I give you time to get, because the lease is now over,
Right.
and most leases when it ends is a 30 to it's a month to
It
month.
becomes a month to month.
or whatever. So
That's
if
right.
somebody gives you 60 days and they give you that 60 days, it has to be in writing.
But then you become a holdover tenant.
You're a holdover tenant,
And they can actually double the rent.
and they will do that.
Right.
And what ends up, because the law doesn't look at whether unfortunately, whether you have ability or whether you disability.
That's right.
It doesn't look at that.
That's right.
It looks at, if you in a lease,
Right.
with a lease agreement, and they have terms in that lease, do you comply with those terms?
That's right.
And then if the landlord says, if you and the landlord can't agree on whatever, then what ends up happening is they give you a time certain. Then, again, you ain't got to leave. You ain't got to leave.
Okay.
But you got to be evicted.
Wait a minute. So
You ain't got to leave
until
You're evicted.
there is an order
evicting you.
transferring,
Right.
and that's good there, because what happens is when you lease your place, apartment, house, whatever it is, you no longer have control over that property.
Right.
It's been transferred from you to the tenant.
Right.
And it can only be restored by the court. Granting you possession again.
Possession again.
And so until you get possession again, you don't direct anything
Exactly.
about what goes on in that property.
Exactly.
You can't show up at all times of day or night talking about inspection the property.
You can inspect the property. You just
With
reasonable,
notice.
reasonable notice.
Yeah, with notice. But
yeah.
you just can't show up and say I'm inspecting
Right.
the property.
And contrary to popular belief, tenants can't change the locks either, because the locks, it's in your lease normally. Your lease says that I'm entitled to have a key.
Well, I can change the lock, but I got to provide a key.
Exactly.
Because the landlord has to have access
Right.
to the property
Correct.
in case you abandon it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, also it says too that if you're gone from the property more than 7 days or so, right there too, that the landlord can deem the property vacated.
I don't agree with that.
Right.
Abandonment is 7 days is not. Man, I go on vacation for 7 days.
Right.
So 7 days is not. It can't possibly be
But you
abandoned.
get a landlord notice
I don't. Why do I got to tell a landlord I'm going on vacation?
because the property is being left
I
open.
am paying rent. I am paying my utilities.
Okay.
I can go on vacation for 30 days as long as the end of the month or the beginning of the next month,
Okay.
my rent is being paid.
Okay. So mail is running out of the mailbox.
Again,
Newspapers are gathering in the front
So
lawn.
what?
The grass is grown up over the windows.
So what?
And I can't get in touch with you. You abandoned my property.
you got your rent.
I don't know if you paid rent or not because you're on 30 days. Did you send it in?
No. If I did, absolutely.
Or did you pay it in advance?
I paid it in advance.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So there are some conditions.
Yeah, as long as I'm paying the
If
rent.
you pay your rent, that's a different story.
Now, if you want to evict me because I am
The grass is growing
I'm a
up.
nuisance,
Right.
Because most contracts have a nuisance provision in
Okay.
it. So if you want to evict me for I'm a nuisance, you can go to court for that.
Right.
But once you take the process to start evicting me, you can't take my rent. You have to take my rent and what they call with reservation.
Well, they can take it with reservation of rights.
With reservation
and
of
so,
can't
audience,
spend it, can't put it in a box, and can't put it in your bank account and spend it.
audience, be very careful. People think that, I done borrowed from Sam, Dave, George, and Julie, and now I have all of the money. that was owed, except the attorney fees, except the court costs, and they accepted it, but they put on the receipt with reservation of rights.
Yeah.
You just lost every dime that you
You can
made.
keep that money in your pocket.
So you can move.
Can you move?
So and be very careful with that. The other thing is, just because you get a 3-day notice letter, how many times do people call you and say, my landlord just put a 3-day notice on my door. Do I have to be out by the end of the week?
I tell them no.
No, absolutely not.
I tell them every time no.
Absolutely
You know.
not, because no one is required to leave until the court speaks.
Right. Puts you out. And let me, this disability question had a little bit more to it.
Okay.
Because what it did say is the landlord initially attempted to increase the rent. Because remember, your lease is ended.
Right.
And once your release ends, the landlord can
Absolutely.
increase your rent. But then he dropped it back down. The tenant decided at the end of not to renew the lease and was given, you to vacate. New housing had not been secured within the 60 days, and he asked for additional time, but was refused. Absolutely.
Absolutely what?
The landlord refused to extend the time.
Because the person.
Because I gave you 60-day notice.
Well, the person themselves decided they wasn't going to
Exactly.
renew the lease.
Exactly.
So you caused that issue
But the landlord can't put you out.
until it goes to court.
He got to go to court and get the eviction process to put you out. He's going to start that after the 60 days because I gave you 60-day notice. So on day 61, if you are still there, I'm starting that process.
But there, I do not see one of the judges putting a disabled person out on the street.
Ain't got much. The judges may not want to do that.
But he has to pay because he's on month to month. He paid the first 30 days. He's paid the second 30 days.
Right.
He just has to continue to pay.
No, you
month
cannot.
to month.
No, I've given you.
Unfortunately, I can't find another
That's
place.
not my problem. That's
So
not my problem.
Where do I go?
Man, don't make me say where you can go. But where you ain't gonna go, you ain't gonna stay here.
I don't see a judge. I don't see a judge doing that.
I gave you 30-day notice.
I don't-
That's all I'm required to do.
I don't
Is
see
give you a 30-day
judge
notice.
putting a disabled person out on the street in their wheelchair and all that. Man,
Judge, you can come live with you.
man,
Judge, you can come live with you.
man, Channel 3 and everybody else is going to be
And
right
they
on
do
top of that.
They are on top of it, but they ain't giving that person no place to stay.
But I'm telling you, it's going to look so bad to the public until the judge is going to acquiesce and allow that person additional time.
What even looks worse for the judge is the judge decides not to abide by the law and make a deception for somebody in contradiction of the law. A judge is supposed to be on that bench, unemotional, unbiased, without prejudice. The law says a tomato is red. You give me a red tomato. We're done with this. It doesn't say shades of green and yellow and orange and all that stuff.
Yeah, we know all the time
That's-
that judges
that's
make
called
decisions.
Chancery Court.
Judges make decisions all the time based on public perception.
Yeah.
Because remember, that is a question in the law.
Well, that's
public-
equity.
yeah.
That's a court of equity. That's
Right.
what's Chancery Court. Unfortunately, FEDs don't fall in the court of
Right.
equity. FEDs fall in general sessions, and they don't fall in circuit court.
I would not want to be standing in front of the news cameras trying to explain, Mr. O'Neill, why on earth would you put?
Because he ain't paying.
No, he wanted to pay. No, he wanted to pay.
Dude.
But you wouldn't accept it, remember?
Channel 13. You can let him live with you. You got a spot for him?
But that's another thing too. I'm glad we're still there because the landlords have a problem of closing the portal when people get behind on their rent, so people can't pay it.
Well, I hadn't heard about
your
that.
clients have portals, but that's when you have a large apartment complex.
Yeah, but they
pay through a portal.
If you do that, there is avenues around it. But we'll get on that next time. All right, y'all. We was rolling for a minute. Jerome always with this nonsense. Give somebody extra anyway. Thank you for watching the show. We'll see you back next week.